Out with the old, in with the new. This is a timely discussion for so many security leaders around why now is the time to take a hard look at our legacy defense tools across digital risk protection and security awareness training. I'm your host, Alvin Lin, Director of Product Marketing here at Doppel. Joined with me here is Kendra Cooley. She is our Global Head of Security and IT here at Doppel. Hello, Kendra.
Hello, thank you for having me, Alvin.
Great to have you. She's a seasoned practitioner. She's got the rap sheet for that, and a current leader who sits in the same chair as many of you on the call today across global organizations. Kendra, welcome. Can you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Absolutely. So I'm Kendra Cooley, and I lead the information security and IT programs here at Doppel. I've been in the industry for about 15 years, and for the last 8.5, I've really been focused on building programs from the ground up. Something that my experience has taught me is that the threat landscape has changed a lot faster than most of our security tools have. The legacy tools we've been using were built for a world that just simply no longer exists. And Doppel is here specifically to prepare us for this world that we're entering. So I'm really excited to be a part of this conversation today and share my perspective on where traditional approaches are kind of starting to break down and what modern attacks actually look like and where security teams really need to keep up.
Appreciate that, Kendra. And that leads me to share Doppel's founding story. We've always been about outpacing what's next. It's always been in our DNA. It's the very thing that continues to drive what's next for Doppel and our customers every day. And so I want to take a moment to share that story with the folks today. Our story actually begins in 2016. Our CTO, Raul, was roommates with the head of research at OpenAI, and that gave him front row seats to ChatGPT being built. And so while the other giants were racing to build the next breakthrough, he saw the threat between everything else, which was AI powering deception at scale. And so he called up our CEO, Kevin, a former colleague from Uber that he'd known and worked with. And between pickup basketball games, they actually shaped the vision for Doppel. And from day one, we've been obsessed with speed and focus as a company, always outpacing what's next and stopping what others haven't even seen yet. And that's very much a part of what we do today. Kendra, you've been one of the earliest employees at Doppel. What made you decide that Doppel was the place that you wanted to be at next?
Great question. And quite honestly, it comes down to the two people that are on the screen right now. So what initially made me want to join Doppel was really the people and just the incredible drive that they had to solve problems. 2 years ago, the company looked very different from what it looks today, but I really believed in our founders and their ability to not only build something interesting, but also to understand where this industry as a whole was going and to work to address those problems. So what's been especially exciting for me in my time here has just been watching the foresight play out in this new world of AI. Over time, Doppel evolved into a social engineering defense platform, and that evolution is very much aligned with kind of what probably a lot of us on this call are seeing. So the threat landscape has become more adaptive, more personalized, and way more human targeted than I think we ever saw coming. And so for me, it started with the belief in the team, and it's only been reinforced by the shared view of where security needed to go next.
It's really good. That foresight's critical. You can see here we're sort of entering into this new age, this new generation of AI-driven deception. And we're in it right now. Hyper-personalization is exploding at scale. We're seeing phishing volume go up while attacker costs are going down by 95% actually due to AI. And so attackers now aren't needing to sacrifice quality for scale to get both. Trust is weaponized. The majority of organizations at 62% are being faced with deepfakes. So when a CEO calls with a voice that we recognize, all it takes is 60 seconds of trust to take the keys. This threat remains unseen to so many of us. It takes on average 260 days to detect and contain a social engineering attack. For perspective, that's like 9 months that attackers are inside the walls of an organization before detection. And that's long enough to do some serious damage. Kendra, as a security leader, that 260-day containment number is quite a nightmare. From your perspective, why does this stay unseen for so long?
You nailed it. It is the ultimate nightmare. And it's, usually just because it means that the attacker wasn't just inside, they were operating below the threshold for detection for months. So, from my perspective, the reason that it stays unseen for so long is because most organizations still have blind spots across identity, endpoints, cloud, contractors, third parties. I mean, you name it. So, an attacker really only needs just one quiet path to stick around. And a lot of our security programs just aren't optimized for that. We're looking at alerts and we're not understanding the adversary's attack behaviors over time. So teams are using individual signals, but not one that's connecting them to the broader campaign. And on top of that, the attackers are using valid accounts, legitimate admin tools, and normal looking traffic so they can blend in. And then, of course, we have resource constraints that are a real thing, especially in our industry and just the market that we're in today. So analysts are overloaded, logging is incomplete, investigations often stop at just that first explanation that seems good enough. And so the amount of time that an attacker can stay hidden isn't usually about just one missed alert. It's more often about fragmented visibility, weak identity controls, and detection programs that just simply aren't built to catch kind of that low and slow
Yeah.
abuse.
Yeah, that's exactly why the unseen threat is so effective. I think at this point, so many of us have heard attackers aren't breaking in, they're logging in. That's not even the full story. Attackers aren't just hitting one door anymore. They're actually orchestrating the entire environment of deception. Attacks are complex. They're multi-vector. They're happening now. And what used to be a single email or a suspicious website is a thing of the past. The attacks are now coordinated across email, SMS, social, voice, and these are entire ecosystems of deception that are designed to feel real at every touch point. These can get spun up, scam as a service, within minutes, seconds, at a very low cost. These can be really complex by bad actors like scatter spiders, shiny hunters. So the new attack surface isn't just your infrastructure, it's human trust. That's the problem. And brands and people need protection more than ever. The stakes are real. Attacks can now shut down operations and destroy value overnight. One example here is that one single phishing call brought an entire casino empire to its knees, and this paralyzed slot machines to hotel elevators for over a week. A single breach at a household brand that so many of us are familiar with actually broke the supply chain. The effect was emptying shelves, erasing 20% of company value overnight, essentially. And yet, most are still relying on tools that weren't built for this scale or sophistication. Kendra, you've been in the hot seat during major incidents. When a high velocity attack like this hits, what is the legacy experience like? What is that actually like in the war room? Can you walk us through that? Some of these war stories?
Yeah, to paint a picture that probably a lot of us on this call are familiar with is chaos disguised as process, I think is probably the best way to put it. So you have a team that is absolutely flooded with alerts. Everyone is chasing different pieces of a story, and leaders are asking for answers before we really have all the facts. I mean, that's about as plainly as I can put kind of what that scenario looks like. And then at the same time, you're trying to determine what the scope of the incident is, contain the damage, protect the business, brief executives, preserve your credibility, all while those attackers are still moving because they're utilizing all of these automated processes that
Yeah.
are just simply faster than we can keep up with, especially in those legacy tools. So what kind of makes that experience so painful is that our tools are just not built for speed or clarity today. The telemetry is fragmented, the systems don't connect cleanly, and responders are forced to kind of manually stitch these timelines together. I know I've been in that scenario many times where you're going back through like a Slack thread trying to piece together timelines of things, and it's just very messy. So the war room becomes less about decisive action, and it's more about just kind of fighting that fog of what's going on. We're trying to determine what's real, what's noise, how far has something spread, did we actually contain it, or did we just lose visibility to kind of where the attacker is in the system? And that's the part that people often miss. It's the hardest part isn't necessarily the attack itself, it's the uncertainty. And oftentimes in those war rooms, it feels like you're making critical decisions when you're missing half the map.
Yeah. Yeah. I would imagine the time it takes to even gather information, make sense of it, rationalize that in and of itself is stretched pretty long before you even take action. You can't take action on something you don't understand. Have you seen a spectrum of timelines across these incidents?
Absolutely. And
Yeah,
it really depends on the scope of the incident for sure. But oftentimes it
sure.
takes a number of hours to plainly see what information each of your legacy tools is providing to you because you are having to go to so many different areas to stitch things together. So, and then
Yeah,
you kind of have to wonder, did we check all the right things? You
yeah,
know, do we have the full picture?
yeah. The feeling of being outpaced isn't a lack of effort from the team. I think everybody is pulling 18-hour days in those war rooms. It's actually a fundamental limitation of the tech stack that is inherently siloed and fragmented. And so we can see exactly why and hear from Kendra why here. The old way is hitting a breaking point. Legacy tools just can't get the job done. Attackers are now moving faster, wider, and smarter than traditional defenses can handle. It's across three areas. Number one is velocity. AI agents are exploiting exposures in minutes. This is far faster than humans can respond. Number two is volume. They operate 24/7 at infinite scale. So when we're thinking about manual triage, we can't keep up. And then number three is variety. Agentic AI pivots and adapts dynamically when they're blocked. They're able to think critically, exploiting people in real time. Kendra, when you look at these drivers, which one is the biggest resource drain for a modern security org?
All of them. No, I'm going to start with volume, I would say, because volume is often where we see like the break in our operating model kind of day to day. So it's volume is what's going to overwhelm your analysts. It's going to flood your workflows. You're going to have endless streams of alerts and investigation and trouble really prioritizing decisions just because of that manual effort of keeping up with the volume. But the bigger reality is that the volume gets even more expensive and complex when you add the other two. So velocity is going to compress your response time. So all that work showing up is happening faster than humans can assess, right? And then the variety is going to add more strain because attacks aren't just coming in bulk, they're coming to you in ways where they can pivot and change tactics and force the teams to constantly reevaluate the information that's being presented to them. So while volume is probably the biggest immediate resource drain, really I think it's the combination of volume, velocity, and variety that's causing these legacy tools to fall behind, because you're not just dealing with more work, you're dealing with more work that's arriving faster and changing as you respond in real time.
Yeah, it's almost like teams are getting pounded at every dimension. This is a toxic combination. To move from being outpaced to being proactive, it's pretty clear at this point that we have to flip the defensive model entirely. And so we need a few changes here. We need outcomes, not alerts, is what I'm hearing. We need takedowns, not tickets. We need real behavior change for your organization, not checkbox training to build resilience. And we need organizational resilience that you can actually measure and understand risk behavior, not just hope for the best. The good news is that this is exactly what Doppel does. We built the first AI native social engineering defense platform. And this unifies digital risk protection and human risk management under one roof. It's a single closed loop system. Digital risk protection moves beyond just threat detection into actual disruption. We correlate signals into campaigns to make sense of it all and autonomously dismantle attacker infrastructure. This is at the root, this is at the domain, this is at the source. Human risk management puts your people at the center of your defense. How do we do this? Through hyper-realistic simulations and role-based coaching. Your people lead the response. They don't just react to alerts. They're not an afterthought. Attackers don't separate digital from human. They see one target. When they see an organization, they see the logo. They're going after the people, the brand, all of it. And so that's why we built one platform and one shield. By bridging intelligence from out there with behavior in here, Doppel stops attacks before they scale. It's very proactive and makes sure people a driving force in the defense. That is Doppel's unified social engineering defense platform. Here's a Doppel difference. It's about turning visibility into action, because visibility alone is just visibility. It's just signals. Thanks for the intelligence. What do you want me to do with it now? And speed into defense. It starts with multi-channel coverage, right? This gives us full visibility across every attack vector and fuels hyper-realistic simulations so that your team is ready for real-world tactics. Then there's graph-driven intelligence. This links signals across platforms, exposing full attacker infrastructure, and that also feeds targeted coaching so that your team can act before the threats hit. And agentic AI automation. This moves at machine speed. You need to fight AI with AI at machine speed to keep up. Mitigating threats instantly and testing your team against sophisticated deepfakes that generic training misses. That is the Doppel difference. And so this is what proactive defense looks like. When we think about the digital side, we're able to stop attacks before others know they exist. On the human side, equally as important, we prepare your teams to play a leading role in the defense. And together, this is how we proactively build resilience. So we aren't just reacting to what's in the inbox alone, we're dismantling the campaign before it scales. When these conversations make their way into board meetings, how does this unified approach change the story you're telling them about the company's risk?
In those conversations, we're really changing the conversation from cost to value, I would say, is the biggest takeaway there. So with the legacy tools, a lot of what we talk about in terms of reporting is here's how much we spent to stay compliant, right? Here's how much we spent to check the box. While with the unified approach, we can talk about resilience as an organization in much more concrete terms. So instead of saying, we trained people and we hope it helps, I can say things like our mean time to contain was reduced by 90%. And then we were able to dismantle 50 campaigns this month before they actually ended up being things that landed in our inbox or were text messages that were sent to our employees. So that's a very different conversation that we're having in the boardroom. And it shows that, we're not just reacting to what's landing in the inbox. We're stopping those attacks earlier. We're preparing our teams, and they know the role that they play in the defense. And, we're proactively building that resilience across both the digital and the human side.
That's a really powerful perspective and statement. True resilience also comes in the form of seamless defense that avoids the friction of tool silos by integrating into your existing stack. I think one natural question is, okay, cool, like thank you for this, but I don't want to bring on another tool if it doesn't exist in the ecosystem of my current tech stack. This makes your SIM and SOAR investments more valuable through high fidelity campaign intelligence. And that's good news for us. Defense only works if it's seamless. So Doppel integrates fully with your existing security stack. So your SIM and SOAR tools work together at machine speed. This one platform unifies your defense. And so it's able to power one-click takedowns, and it stops those social engineering threats across every workplace app. Organizations also don't want disconnected point solutions. We don't need another thing. We need something that is actually going to materially help us exponentially. And so Doppel's platform delivers end-to-end, working as a single system to close the loop. When we think about digital risk protection, that automates detection and takedowns. And the outcomes there is reducing breach risk, reputational exposure, and SOC burden. Across brand protection, this stops multi-channel impersonation and dismantles attacker infrastructure in real time. Executive protection protects high-value targets with PII removal, deepfake detection, and footprint scrubbing. Brand abuse box there at the bottom automatically resolves user-submitted phishing reports. And our threat intelligence layer, right in the middle, our reports give CISO-ready roadmaps. Our graph insights surface the live evidence needed for deeper investigation as a double click. When we think about the human risk management side, this is the proactive human layer we just talked about. Hyper-realistic simulations, just-in-time role-based training, and risk modeling shape behavior across your most vulnerable teams so that no stone is left unturned. And so I want to pin this thought around human risk management being one of the most critical things to get right. And I would love your perspective on this, Kendra. Before we do that, let's just quickly take a look at how Doppel delivered unified defense for a Fortune 500 customer and what all this looks like in the real world context. So this Fortune 500 customer is the number one player in the vertical with a massive national footprint, naturally a massive target. Their HR and support teams were being hit with phishing, smishing, and impersonation scams, and their traditional tools, quite frankly, just weren't keeping up. Here's what we found. Doppel uncovered over 700 scams. We removed 100% of requested takedowns within 48 hours. We tested human risk with 100 CISO voice clone AI calls. 100% of employees believed them with an average of a 6-minute conversation. And so these attackers were literally one step away from the CISO's password. And these insights give organizations measurable visibility into human vulnerabilities. And this enables targeted interventions that reduce risk. And that's exactly what we did here. This case study is a perfect example of why legacy defense and offense is failing. Every one of these employees actually had passed their compliance training, yet 100% of them stayed on the phone with the voice clone. Kendra, you oversee the human risk management aspect of Doppel. Why do you think their legacy training failed them so completely, even with the best intent?
Oh, welcome to the story of my life. All right. So I believe that their security awareness training failed them because oftentimes this training is built on the idea that if someone watches a short training video once a quarter, they'll have everything that they need to be ready for that real world attack at
Yeah.
that moment. And that's simply just not how people respond under pressure. What's the old Mike Tyson's quote? Everyone has a plan until they get punched, or whatever that goes,
Yeah.
right?
Right. Right.
So what this case study, to me at least, shows is that the issue wasn't necessarily a knowledge problem, it was a rehearsal problem. So
Right.
every one
Right.
of those employees had technically passed their compliance training, but when they were put into a realistic high pressure scenario with a voice on the other end that they recognized, they stayed on the phone. That tells you that the training just didn't prepare them for the tactics that attackers are actually using today.
Yeah. Yeah. You can't watch a video to prepare for a cage match. You can't watch baseball games on TV and expect to jump into a pickup game and do well. You got to get out there and actually do the training. And there's nothing that substitutes that. And so we aren't rehearsing against the actual, if we aren't rehearsing against the actual tactics that attackers are using, we're just checkbox training while our teams are staying vulnerable. So that's a good word. To wrap up, folks, if you only take 3 things away from today's briefing, I certainly hope that we've challenged a shift in thinking towards your current tech stack today. Will it stand up to today's modern threat environment and landscape? Here are 3 things I want to leave you with. The model must flip. Legacy tools are ticket factories, right? You need a system that actually focuses on outcomes, not alerts. If it's not an autonomous takedown, if it doesn't produce measurable behavior change, it's just more noise for your SOC. And your SOC already has enough to deal with on a daily basis, just at baseline operations level. Unity is security, number 2. Attackers don't silo their tactics. We mentioned that attackers don't see human from digital. They see one target. It might be your organization. By unifying DRP and HRM to stop the pivot from a social DM to a voice clone before it ever reaches the keys to your kingdom. That chain, that attack chain, it actually breaks because Doppel's interfering and disrupting that motion. We need to fight AI with AI. We can't solve a machine speed problem with human speed manual workflows. We covered velocity, volume, and variety as three of the top reasons why legacy is just not meeting the moment. Agentic AI is not a buzzword. It's actually the only way to scale your defenses as fast as attackers are scaling their deception. Kendra, do you have any last parting words for the folks on the call today?
Yeah, absolutely. So security teams definitely do not need more dashboards, more alerts, or more complexity. We need leverage, and we need to be able to take all of the tools that we already have to help us see things faster, make decisions faster, and contain things a lot faster. And to your point, we're in the day and age where we have to match machine-driven threats with machine-assisted defense without losing that human in the loop when it matters most.
Yeah, we actually spoke earlier about this, and it might actually be a fun thing to mention. Human in the loop is actually necessary at some points, right? I think within context, within circumstances, AI is shaping stones, as we mentioned, but humans are still the architects. Humans still build cathedrals, and we certainly are moving. And this narrative will change, even in 6 months or 4 months. And mark my words there. But there is a time and place for both to operate together and find the balance there, and that's where we find that it works best. That's the core of everything we do. What you just said. The landscape, the attack vectors, the threat actors, these will all continue to evolve. They will not look the same potentially 6, 12 months from now as what we're talking about today. But the mission at Doppel stays the same. It's to protect the world from social engineering attacks every single day. And so Doppel is leading the charge to outpace what's next. We're ready to come alongside you as you consider moving out your tools and approaches and trade them in for ones that are purpose-built for today, that can keep up with today's speed, that can keep up with today's volume and variety. And so I want to move into a time of Q&A. We are welcoming your questions. We'll try to answer these live. Please send them in. I think we got a first one in, Kendra. I'm going to read it out and see if you could take a hack at this one. What types of attacks does Doppel simulate and train against?
All of the above. All right. So Doppel is training against all kinds of social engineering attacks by default. So the things that are actually happening right now, multi-step phishing, QR code phishing, credential harvesting, vendor impersonation, executive targeting, all of those things are natively included in our platform in order for Doppel to train against.
Fantastic. Here's another one. How is Doppel HRM different from traditional security awareness training?
I would say the biggest differentiator is that it's still supporting our compliance effort, but the approach is really built around kind of real risk and not the generic annual security training. So the idea is to make the training more threat informed, tailored to your organization, and adaptable to the attacks that we're seeing that are changing on a day-to-day basis.
Fantastic. Let's see. How does Doppel support compliance without turning training into a checkbox exercise?
Kind of feels like a similar question.
Yeah. It looks like we've got folks answering incoming Q&A as well. And so do let us know if you have any other questions after this webinar. We are so happy to answer them for you. I just want to say thank you for your time and for all the work that you do to keep your organization safe. If this session got you thinking about how your current defense stacks up in this modern AI-driven context, visit doppel.com/compare. That's doppel.com/compare for more information as a helpful resource after this webinar. It's been a pleasure. Kendra, thank you for your time. See you all later. Thank you so much.